Live look at the White House. Joining us now from Washington, former White House advisor for health policy, Dr. Zeke Emanuel, and from Capitol Hill, Republican Senator from Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson. Gentlemen, thanks to you both for joining us this morning. Senator Johnson, I understand you see this as a body blow to freedom, to read your words.
Well, I think what the Supreme Court basically did, Justice Roberts, he rewrote the health care law. I guess it's not my definition of judicial restraint, but really, so what the Supreme Court has done is basically turn it back over to the political process, to Congress, and so it's our job now to paint a picture of what our health care system is going to look like and what our budget's going to look like under this health care law. I think the best way to describe it is what the health care law will do is it will increase the demand for health care and it will reduce the supply. Now that's a disaster in terms of what our healthcare system is going to look like. So, again, the other thing, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say before you jump in, let me jump in. But Senator, I've heard a lot of conservatives say that this was a hidden tax all along. It seems that John Roberts has some conservatives would think, has outed the White House for being tax people that increase taxes on American people. I mean, isn't that what conservatives have been saying?
Well, sure, and let's face it, the president promised he wouldn't raise taxes on the middle class by a penny with this health care law. Well, that's been proven false now. I heard an earlier guest say that it's very difficult to figure out what the cost of this is going to be. Actually, it's pretty easy to find out the minimum cost. If you take a look at the real budget window, when this really kicks in, 2016 to 2025, it'll cost $2.4 trillion, and we really only have about $500 billion, $500 billion of fees, penalties, not penalties, taxes, that are going to pay for that. So you got about a $1.6 trillion budget deficit that is going to come out of what? Reduced funding for Medicare and Medicaid? It's going to be a disaster.
Zeke, where do you want to start?
Well, there's a lot of hyperbole there. We're going to get rid of freedom in America and all of this. Let's be clear. All that John Roberts did was to change the labels. The fundamental underlying fact of the bill is not being rewritten. I think the other important point here is that this bill, contrary to what the senator says, gives Americans freedom. Freedom to know that if they get a pre-existing condition, they're still going to get health insurance. Freedom to allow them in the exchanges to choose which insurance company, which doctor, which hospital they want. They get more freedom because they can get preventative tests without any copayment. Finally, it eliminates people who are, basically not pulling their own weight by not having health insurance and yet using the system. I would have thought that individual responsibility would appeal to you, Joe. That's really what we should have. Everyone needs to take responsibility, and all the individual mandate says.
Hey, Zeke,
He's not arguing. He's not arguing.
I don't know, Zeke, if you were so caught up in the excitement of the moment. I mean, but you're having a debate here with the senator. Don't drag me in. Don't shoot me. I'm only a piano player.
I heard you say you weren't for the individual mandate, but the fact is, you're a conservative. You want people to assume responsibility. Right. This enforces that assuming of responsibility.
Enforces that. I don't want to get into a constitutional argument, but you know what? I am a conservative with a small c and a large c. I understand what Justice Roberts did, but like Justice Roberts and the other conservatives on the court, I don't want the federal government to mandate what people have to do proactively in buying health care insurance. That frightens me.
So if someone doesn't have health care
I've got a senator here. Don't debate me. Let's go to the senator. Senator Johnson, respond, and then Zeke jump in. I swear, Zeke, you're worse than Ari and Ram combined. I don't know what I'm going to do with you. Go ahead, Senator.
Joe, first of all, I agree with you. The American people don't like being told what to do. They also don't like the IRS being, in charge of collecting that penalty. But again, I'd like to think there's a pot of gold at the end of the Obamacare rainbow. And of course, Dr. Emanuel is going to be talking about all these wonderful things in the future. The problem is the promises the president made already haven't come true. He said it was going to reduce the cost of a family health care plan by $2,500 by the end of his first term. Well, the cost of a family plan is up by over $2,000. He said if you like your health care plan, you can keep it no matter what. Period. That's not going to be true. And again, I tried to point out that just in the real budgetary window, when the real costs kick in, that's $1.6 trillion. I provided your producers with a graph. That is a serious threat to our budget or to Medicare and Medicaid. Again, you've already got Medicaid providers that are dropping out of the system that refuse to see patients. We're going to dump another 20 to 30 million people into Medicaid. And that's really what we're going to be turning our healthcare system into, as a Medicaid system. I don't think the American people are going to particularly like it.
Tom.
Senator, help me out. As I look at the Congressional Budget Office numbers up to this point, and they're doing another evaluation right now, without this health care plan, it'll add more than $200 billion to the deficit. As you say, with the health care plan, there will be additional costs in the $1 trillion range, but they say over the long haul, the savings in Medicare and in other health care expenditures will pull that number down, not all the way to zero, but that it will make it much more in balance.
Tom, it's extremely easy to just take the numbers the CBO projected, the minimum cost of this thing, move the window forward to 2016 to 2025, and the total cost would be $2.4 trillion. Now, the pay-fors for this thing in the first 10-year window was about $500 billion in taxes, fees, and penalties. Well, again, it's all taxes now, and reductions in reimbursement to providers in Medicare and Medicaid. So, as you move that window forward, you only got about $500 billion in taxes. That leaves a $1.6 trillion deficit gap. That's a huge budget hit. And so, again, I would like to think that this thing is going to be, actually reduce our budget, but I don't ever see where government estimates come out accurate. When they first passed Medicare, they said it would cost $12 billion in 1990. It ended up costing $110 billion, almost 10 times the original estimate.
I mean, I do not want the senator as my accountant. He says we're going to have $500 billion in the first decade. That's to 2020. And then if you look at the expenses, 2016 to 2025, they're this larger amount. You got to look at expenses and costs and revenue in the same window and not switch your windows.
All right.
But here's the important thing that I think Tom emphasized. The CBO has said over and over again that this bill actually reduces the deficit by $100 billion. When we actually passed the bill, we provided revenue and savings. When they did Part D on Medicare, they didn't pay for it at all, and it all went into deficit. We're the fiscally responsible group.
A window
the broken promises
into the next few months. Dr. Zeke Emanuel and Senator Ron Johnson, thank you.
Quite a window. Love you guys. Thank you for coming. You're fun. Take it on the road.
Love you too, Joe.
Yeah, whatever, Zeke. Whatever. I'm talking to Ari about you.
All right, you're watching Morning Joe, brewed by Starbucks. We'll be right back.